Hello and welcome to Thrown In at the Deep. Fuck me, shallow end.
Off to a great start.
Hello and welcome to Thrown In at the Shallow End. I'm your host Robert McGinn and joining me today is Chris Sherlock.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. Opening night jitters I don't really understand, but suppose we just get on with it then, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. Let's dive in at the Shallow End. Hey.
What was the album? Well, we're doing an album. What was the album you asked me to listen to?
So I asked you to listen to From Mars to Sirius by Gojira.
Good. I did listen to the right one. Good.
I mean, I'll save opinions for when we really get into it, but I think they're all quite good personally, so They wouldn't have mattered.
I also now know how to pronounce Gojira, which is good, because I had no idea how I was going to try and say it, and that's why I let you introduce it.
Wise.
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose, first question would be, why was that the album that you asked me to listen to?
So you asked me if I could think of a good sort of death metal album to introduce you to.
Yeah, well, that was more of a suggestion though, because it was just you were known as Metal Chris at university, so
that is true. That was my nickname.
That was your thing, but I would have accepted anything, but that was my assumption going forward.
Yeah, no, it sounded like an interesting idea, so I thought that would be something interesting for you to try out. And I was torn between a couple of different albums that I'm not necessarily the most knowledgeable in death metal ever, so people will probably argue that my choices wouldn't be death metal, whatever.
Oh God. The fact that we've started classifying what kind of genre it is gonna... It's lucky this is episode 1, we're not going to have a huge fan base yet, because...
Yeah, that's true. But I eventually whittled it down to 2 albums, and I thought that this album would be a better sort of introduction to what can be classed as death metal, because I know it can be quite abrasive on a first listen to people if they're not necessarily in the right mindset for it or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, it was... I did actually go and listen just briefly to the other album that you suggested, which...
Oh, yes. Which was The Satanist by Behemoth.
Yeah, that... You made the right choice out of those 2, I think.
Yeah, I thought that would be the case, yeah.
It wasn't like immediately switch it off, but it was definitely the deeper end. Let's just, if you're sticking with the theme.
Yes, I agree.
Okie dokie. So, I suppose you sort of, showed your hand slightly beforehand, but we take it that you enjoy the album, at least a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't have recommended it to you if I didn't at least enjoy it to some level.
That's a fair point, yeah.
Because I feel like it would be a bit of a weird one if I just said, here, listen to this album, God, isn't it rubbish? But, I suppose I quite happily could have done that, but I thought I'd give you one that I actually do enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, then. I mean, that's a fair point. I suppose I'll show my hand as well at this point. I really enjoyed it as well. It was a really good album. Because it was the entire time I remember thinking it, and I think we was going to have a quick run through the individual tracks as well.
Sure, yeah.
But the entire time I was listening to it, I was thinking, this is exactly what I wanted on the podcast.
Oh, that's good.
Because it was like, you've hit the nail right on the head, because I could imagine some people would have just gone, here's my favourite thing from this genre. And it might have been something like The Satanist, and I would have gone, oh no.
Yes.
But there are so many moments in this album that I just thought, this is amazing. There are a few moments where I went, oh, that's very abrasive, and that's very what I was expecting. But then there were a lot of moments where they were really pulling me back in.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point as well, because they do have a lot of moments where, well, I mean, one of the tracks of it's called The Heaviest Matter of the Universe. It's kind of a clue to the sort of music.
Yeah.
But I know we're going to do the more in-depth track, but they do have these nice, sort of more calm, mellow points, more melodic parts in it.
Yeah, they really do.
Which I think just makes it a really nice sort of introductory album to someone who doesn't necessarily know, but also a really solid album. just overall.
Yeah, there was there was one thing I noticed, and I can imagine you being a drummer, this might have played quite largely into it, but I imagine you really like the drums in this.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Because that was a big takeaway for me, was just how good the drummer sounds on this.
He's really, really good, and I've seen Gojira live a couple of times now, and every time I see them, I just have to watch him, partly because I am a drummer, so I enjoy watching other drummers play, but he just seems to be able to do things that I wouldn't ever be able to do. He just seems to have this amazing technicality and groove that just fits perfectly into the songs.
Yeah, I mean, groove is, I think, the key word that we're going to come back to quite a lot in the album review.
Yes.
Because it was something that I took away from, like, a lot of what I wanted to do with the podcast was to break down my very ignorant, preconceived notions about about everything, really. And in particular, death metal, I had always assumed it's just blast beats, screaminess, tremolo picking, moshiness.
I mean, if there is a lot of that.
True. But there was a lot of things where it was just like, this is a really great groove. And a lot of the times I could visualize the audience in a gig just headbanging to it. But it would be amazingly good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we could move on to the track-by-track review, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okie dokie. It opens with Ocean Planet.
Yes.
Which is a great opener. Yeah. I really like that.
It is, yeah. So Ocean Planet, I think the first time I saw them was the song they opened the concert with. And it's such a good way to sort of throw you into it, because the opening grooves, the drums are so heavy, the riff's so sort of, it chugs away and it just really pulls you in.
Yeah.
And it's a very trademark Gojira song, because it's got a lot of the techniques that you find throughout a lot of their songs. Like a lot of the sort of pinch harmonic-y things.
Yeah.
I can't think what the right word for them is, because they're not quite pinch harmonics, but sort
I might
of
be
slides.
I might be doing an episode with Dave at one point and ask him if he'll know, because it's a guitar.
Yeah, he'll definitely know, yeah.
But it's the, I mean, looking at just some of the notes I made listening to it, and every time, everything is just like, it's a great groove on that riff at the intro, and then it changes up a few times to different musical styles.
Yeah.
And each one of them works really well. It's a good change. And the outro, especially, I really like the vocals in the outro, the big sort of epic opening to the album that it gives.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you read into the album. So it's a kind of concept album about, like...
I browsed the Wikipedia page, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's quite nice to sort of set that scene as well. And the band themselves are quite active about whale conservation and environmentalist issues. So it amalgamates in this album, I would say.
I mean, it was something I did read when you first suggested it. I did Google them quickly, and I did see like, oh yeah, it's like the like progressive death metal, progressive death metal environmentalism.
That's it. Yeah,
that does make me go like, oh, all right.
Yeah, it's just it's a bit out there.
Yeah, but then you listen to it and go, oh, okay.
Now I understand. Yes. Yeah.
It really does come off very well, and the album artwork. I'm very, very tempted to get look into getting a cheap vinyl of it, because that artwork is lovely.
It is. We'll come on to it a bit later, but I found it funny that when you were saying, I'll give you an album that's sort of tangentially related for me to try out.
Yeah.
The album artwork for your album was more sort of what I would class as death metal-y than the one that I've got, which amused me.
It's like a little beige planet with a whale on it.
Yeah, you normally see sort of lots of dark colours, words that you can barely read, and sort of these strange,
I do like those ones, yeah.
Visceral pictures. And I just thought, my one's nothing like that, and yours is absolutely like that. It's just a really strange thing to have happened.
Yeah, and then we'll get onto it anyway. Yeah, as you say.
Yes.
So then it goes into Backbone.
Yep.
Which I've written here. Stomping is just the first word that I've written. This is, for the next few tracks, or at least the next two, are more in line with what I anticipated.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
I still liked them, don't get me wrong, if you just showed me these two songs, I'd be less inclined, but in the context of the album,
Yeah.
I do quite like them. 2 points that I have raised on for both tracks. I'm gonna, unless you have any objection, I'm gonna sort of slam Black Bone and From the Sky together.
That's fine, yeah.
They run together in my head quite a bit. Is the,
Yeah.
I'll separate them a bit, but the drumming on that is particularly prominent. So like the blast beats that I noticed in Backbone.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a pinch harmonic thing where it's not technically a blast beat and I got it wrong, but
No.
yeah. There's still quite a fair bit of melody running through it as well, which is what I was a bit, well, again, going back to my preconceived notions, that I was a bit surprised at how much melody and how catchy it was, for want of a better word.
Yeah. I think that's one of the nice things as well, is that they just, although they are this heavy band who make these heavy songs about environmentalist issues sometimes, they do still have these catchy hooks or catchy riffs that will just keep you in. Because I know, like you say, I've introduced Gojira before, that not in the context of an album, and I have just picked my favourite songs, which sometimes are the heavier ones, with less of this melody in it. And you can see people are just like, right, okay, yes, they've got this groove going, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes. But I think it's interesting that you say that if I'd have given you those two songs, you'd have been sort of not bothered, a bit turned off by it. But in the context of the album, you get it. And I think that's just really nice.
Well, they're sandwiched between the very sort of groovy opener and then Unicorn, which follows, which is the instrumental piece. Is that instrumental, Unicorn?
It is an instrumental, yes.
I've written it
really
here,
nice little, it's like a little melodic interlude before it all starts back up again.
Oh, and it does start back up again, doesn't it?
It does. It does very much start back up again.
With Where Dragons Dwell.
Yes.
This was the start I was expecting, but that I still really, really liked. So it's a nice swing into like a hard double bass sort of pickup. The double bass on this album is very, very impressive.
Oh yeah, the man's an absolute machine. Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to keep repeating myself because it's always just like, yes, I really love the grooves in it. It's just such a strong song in the context of the album.
I think we are going to whistle through most of the songs because we don't want to keep repeating ourselves, and we also want to leave it up to the listener to actually go out and check some of it out themselves, I think, as well.
That's true, yeah.
Although one thing I did note about Where Dragons Dwell, there's an odd sort of it starts fading out like about a minute from the outro, which I thought was a bit odd.
Yeah, I don't know why that's done.
I mean, this is the level of critique I'm bringing to the album. It's clearly doing something very, very good. If I'm going, oh, that fade out was a little bit premature.
Yeah. I don't know why that's so long. I don't know whether it's this to calm it before they throw you in again, or whether in the context of the concept album that they were building. Because, truth be told, the lyrics are probably the bit I listen to the least. I tend to find, particularly the drumming, I would listen to the most, but I listen to more of the music.
That is interesting to hear, because I had sort of planned that, and there's something I'm going to bring up later.
Okay, sure.
I mean, because I when I first experienced it, I listened to it with these lyrics up, and I read through them as I was listening to the album. But then we go on to the heaviest matter of the universe, as you mentioned before.
Yeah,
and that it lives up to its name.
It does, yeah, it does. The first riff when it comes in, just with them absolutely pounding every drum, absolutely smashing through the guitars, the bass really heavy. It lives up to its name.
It really does. It's got the one band that had a bit of experience with, but I kept hearing popping up, especially when one of them starts singing. I don't know which one, but Mastodon. I heard a bit of in this track.
Yeah, there is that sort of link. Yeah, when they start doing the sort of more melodic vocals, the less harsh, growly vocals.
Yeah.
I've
also just one of the notes I've written is those blast beats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just common throughout the album, but especially on the heaviest matter of the universe, it's so constant. It just keeps going. It really lives up to its name.
That was I was going to say that was one of the highlights of the album for me, but I think it might be slightly overshadowed by. I think instead of saying it's one of the highlights, it's where the album really kicks into gear for me.
Yeah.
Where, because then it goes into Flying Whales.
Yeah.
Which is a weird song lyrically, but musically.
It is a weird song.
It's so good.
Yes. I mean, Flying Whales is my favourite on the album, I think.
It's probably my second favourite, but yeah. We'll
okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, but it's so, I mean, again, I'm going to refer to my notes, the all caps, this intro is so good. Just in
yes.
all caps, scrawled underneath Flying Whales.
Yeah.
And it's the intro, just because it's so calm and restrained in the intro.
That's right, yeah.
When I went in going like, oh, it's going to be death metal kind of stuff. And then just heard that. Yeah,
it's like a sort of, I think it's 2 minutes of just this calm melodic riff going, and they've got the sounds of whales going over the top of it. It's nice and peaceful, but then I think that really helps when the next riff comes in, which
it goes into this great stomping riff out of that very slow build up.
Yeah, it's one of these things. There's a good video where they played a show at Brixton. They've recorded it for a DVD, and when that riff starts up, you just see everyone just really get energetic and start bouncing, and
they are a band you can visualize the live concert going amazingly well.
Yeah,
have you ever heard of an album called Elias of Sun Hillow by John Anderson?
I haven't. No,
it reminded this, not musically. It's nothing musically like it, but it had that sort of space travel flight thing, and it was an odd thing that it reminded me of the lead singer of Yes, his first solo album, and Gojira sort of came together in this one moment, and then, but musically it's so different, but everything's connected in that weird way.
Yeah, I guess that they have got the progressive influences,
they really
which
do,
you can hear throughout, so it's not a million miles away that they might have heard that Yes album, or
possibly, yeah.
Not the Yes album, but his album. So there's definite influences that you could trace back way into sort of the earlier progressive influence and early death metal, anything like that.
Yeah, just the way the whole track moves from section to section, and then it reprises that dun 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 dun. That bit is, and it just goes out on that. It's amazingly good. Flying Whales was a real standout track, and if anyone is listening and thinks, "Oh, should I get into the album?" I would say that's the album. That's the song to check out from the album.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd agree with that. If you want just the visceral heaviness, go for the heaviest matter of the universe. If you want something that encompasses the entire sound, I'd go for Flying Whales.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go into track 8, In the Wilderness. Is that what it's called, actually? I can't remember. My handwriting's terrible.
It is In the Wilderness, yeah.
Okay.
I've got the track list up on the screen next to me, so I can see as you're going through.
I've got my handwritten notes, and I'm terrible at handwriting. Anyway, what have I written here? So this is where I think the environmental sort of message really starts coming forward, because it's been peppered throughout.
Yeah.
But it's really, really in the forefront in this one.
Yeah, I think, from track 8 to the end really is where it really starts to be this very sort of environment conscious storyline. So I think the first couple of tracks is this world's creation and things happening within it. And then I think the heaviest matter of the universe I did actually read the lyrics for, and someone made the comparison that it's like astral projection, I think it was. So someone waking up and seeing the world's going to become this horrendous wasteland if they don't do anything about it.
Okay.
And that's where it really starts to come in with In the Wilderness, where this is starting to come true, perhaps.
Okay. Because I think I missed the broader overarching concept. Well, I picked up that every song was related, and it related back to this message, but I don't think I followed the narrative through. I'll need to go back and look for that now, actually. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where, unless you're specifically searching for it, you don't necessarily immediately pick up on it, because each of these songs, bar a couple, could quite happily stand alone.
Yeah, it's actually, they really do, which is actually going to be quite different to what we're going to look at later on. But
yes, yeah.
So it was the little nice bending riff they have in this track as well. I thought I made a note of. Yeah,
and that's just that's what I would classify as a classic Gojira technique that they use quite a lot. And you can always tell that it's a Gojira riff because they have these sort of the bending patterns or slides that end on these pinchy harmonics, something or others that Dave will know the correct word for.
And then we move on to World to Come, track 9.
Yep.
It's got a real cool, the riff at the intro I really liked, with the sort of the ringing out open strings at the top, so chords moving and pedals and all that weird musical stuff. Yeah.
I have to admit, World to Come is probably my, I say least favourite, but in the grand scheme of it, that's putting them all quite high, and this one just happens to be at the bottom of it. It's not for any reason in particular, I just, personally, it doesn't stand out as much as other ones to me. I can always think of something in each song that I can think, that's really good in that bit, whereas World to Come, it just seems to be the midpoint between the build-up and the big ending of the album to me.
Okay, yeah, its position isn't the... It's come out of some very, very good tracks. It's about to go into the outro. Its position's a bit odd. I really like the music of it, at the very least. Like, some great, great riffs in there. I've written Mastodon again. I've heard that quite a bit in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly, like you say, a bit out of place, but it's still a really solid track.
It is. And that's the thing, like I say, although I call it my least favourite, it's still a good track.
You're going to get that with these sorts of albums, I think.
Yeah.
Because, I'll show my hand at this point. There's no song on here I'm going to go, this was terrible, it was awful.
That's good.
Yeah. But then we move on to, I'll join them together, From Mars to Sirius, so tracks 10 and 11.
Yeah.
And this is arguably what I would call my favourite track, if I'm allowed to group them together.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it sort of leads quite nicely into each other. So, and the album name is From Mars to Sirius, so I'll let you.
That intro is just again, going back to what I was expecting going into the album.
Yeah.
And then you have something like that, which is a very, very subdued, finger-picked, not quite clean, but very, very subdued guitar piece.
Yeah.
That was really, really good. And then it merges lovely into this. It's not like a seamless transition, it works.
It comes in and it hits hard. Yeah.
And it's, again, the drums, obviously. There's some cool breaks in it. It is mainly just, I really like the way that two parts work together, but they do juxtapose one another in the same sort of way. That one's very quiet and restrained, one's very heavy and intense, but they work wonderfully together.
That's right, yeah. And I think, I remember reading somewhere, and I might just be paraphrasing beyond all recognition at this point, that when they were naming these two songs, they were saying, well, Mars is normally sort of this more, well, in mythology, it's the god of war.
Yeah.
So to have it be this really calm song that then leads into Sirius, which is the more calm in mythology, and they've flipped it on its head.
Really good.
Yeah, it's just one of these interesting little things that, again, I had to go and search that out to see if I could find something interesting to talk about, because it's not something I necessarily, knew instantly and went, I've made this connection. But as soon as you think about it, you go, oh yeah, that's really clever. That makes loads of sense.
I made the connection of Mars being war and Sirius being peaceful, but I didn't think, but they flipped it musically.
Yeah.
That really, that's good. That's clever. Well done.
Good job, Gojira.
You have my blessing. And then we move into the album outro, Global Warming.
Yes.
Which, as titles go, it's more on the nose than a lot of the others.
Yeah, I wonder what they could be talking about.
Yeah. It was sort of like they've done the whole album, and at the end, it's just sort of like, it's global warming, alright? Just get it. It's global warming. It's about environment. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It is quite funny that with other songs they have on other albums, they've got ones like Toxic Garbage Island, which I wonder what this could possibly be about. And you read it, it's sort of this pollution thing. You go, I never would have got that. But there's always at least something that's about their environmentalism in there, and I think it's really good.
I think it's very admirable that they evidently feel so passionate about it, and they present it in a way that I think it's rarely seen, because you hear it and you associate it with some long-haired, smelly man with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And not like, look after the planet, now watch me shred this blast beat.
Yeah, and Global Warming's quite an interesting song as well, because you get this stereotypical idea of death metal songs being these dark and broody and miserable lyrics about horrible things, and then Global Warming, even though the start of the song it's about how they're destroying the earth as humanity and he hates it and wants to try and solve it, it ends on this really optimistic note where he's saying, like, well, future generations know this is bad, they're going to fix it, and we'll see them standing on this new world where they've learned from our mistakes.
Yeah,
it's just this nice optimistic note to end on.
Yeah, it's the closing line, isn't it? I can't remember what it from, but we will see our children grow or something to that extent.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a nice way. It wraps it up nicely, and it is a really good way to end the album. Looking at the album, it is just a very well structured album.
It is. Yeah.
Going back to Global Warming, because I've just written again in all caps and larger font, riff OMG, because that intro riff is amazing. I love that so much.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very well done. But yeah, the fade out and the closing, and it goes to a nice little clean section at the end. Yeah. Really, really well put together album.
Yeah, and it includes, I can't remember exactly what the line is, because I can't remember the lyrics, but there's something where he's saying, like, people feel this feeling of hate, and it's inside me, and I hate it. And when he's screaming, and I hate it, you can just hear the emotion in it, that he just hates this state of being, where we're all sort of fighting in this global warming stuff. And it's just a really strong, positive message that just, I think, really makes it stand out.
Yeah, and this is what that's a good little segue back into the summary of the album as a whole, is that it's really went against my expectations of what death metal, I'm going to call it death metal just for ease of talking, but it was just, I wasn't expecting that sort of level of optimism from this kind of music. Yeah. And I want to thank you for submitting this album, because it was a really, really good choice. Because I was
That's good.
It was kind of worried that I'd have, like, when I tried to get into it before, one of the albums that was suggested was Damnation by Opeth.
Yes, yeah.
And the problem with that suggestion was that it is just a completely radical departure for Opeth. It's essentially a Steven Wilson album that Opeth happened to do. And I liked it, because I like that kind of music. But then when I went to, I don't know, Blackwater Park or something like that, it was more jarring, because I was expecting it, like, oh, that's what Opeth sound like. Oh, no.
Yeah.
But this, because it still has all those elements. It has the blast beats, it has the tremolo binging, it has the growling, the screaming, all that gubbins. It really, really... I'm interested to go and find more albums in this genre now.
Yeah.
Even if you go to individual songs or anything like that.
Yeah, and if you're enjoying this Gojira album, I'd definitely check out the rest of their back catalogue, because there's a nice range where some of it's a lot more the heavier side. More recently, their most recent album, Magma, is a lot on the melodic side. Okay. And they've just got this nice sort of... They're not afraid to try and go one way or the other, or mix it up, and it always just seems to hit the nail on the head, I find.
Okay, I mean, they've also definitely moved onto my list of bands to see live one day as well, because that looks like that would be an amazing gig. Yeah,
it's just, like I say, I've seen them a couple of times now, and they're one of these bands that they always seem to be just completely on the money live. Like, everything is just flawless. Whoever they have that does their live sounds needs they need medals upon medals, because they sound so good live. And yeah, it's an experience to be there, I think, is the best way to describe it. But maybe stay out of the pits, because I'd come off very badly bruised when I go in.
Okay. But you mentioned that you are more inclined to listen to the music than you are to the lyrics. That's more what draws you towards it.
Yeah.
And it was because I was reading the lyrics as I was going through. And I do think they've written the album very well. They've got some very, very good points in it. And they're French as well, so like bilingual, English not being their first language. It's very, very impressive. It's very impressive what they've done.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be fun to pick out some of their lyrics.
Okay.
And I've also mixed a few that I've written in there as well.
Oh, no.
So let's just see if you can guess what's the actual Gojira lyric and which one I've just made up. So just like an example, imprisoned I live, death like sickening. This is just an example. This is like, go with your
I'm already,
go with your gut.
I'm going to go with Gojira.
That is Gojira. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbow. Everything that's wonderful is what I feel when we're together.
I'll say you wrote that one.
It's a pop song, but yeah, it's not Gojira.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okie dokie. So let's go for one. Roots to branches, soil to sky, cycle never ending.
I'll say that's a Gojira one.
Wrong. That was me.
Really?
Crave affection, love, and courage.
Again, I think that could be Gojira.
That is Gojira. Well done. I thought that would be a puzzler, that one.
Yeah, but this is like what I was saying earlier. Although this death metal band, they do have these optimistic lyrics in it sometimes, and well, that's not necessarily optimistic in the grand scheme of it, but it's not necessarily what you'd expect.
Yeah, that might ruin the point of this game now. Actually, if that's
well, no,
it comes from the idea of I was expecting like kill them, bleed the eyes, all that sort of stuff.
Sure,
bleed the eyes, but you know that sort of that stuff, and then you get something like living respectful though your axe and learn from the trees.
Was that a Gojira one?
That was a Gojira one, yes.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to try double bluff you there by setting that sentence. Okay. Stars align, planets cool, and I can't see the difference.
This is just really bad for me now, because they all sound like they could be Gojira lyrics
that
to me.
was the point.
So, I'm going to say you wrote that one.
He's on fire. He's on fire.
That was tough, though.
A love for mother, the earth surrounding, respect and honour for all of days.
Gojira?
That was me, I'm afraid.
Oh, you've got very good at writing Gojira-y lyrics. Or at least what I think they are.
It helps when it's sort of like, doesn't need to grammatically make sense because they're not writing in their native language.
That's true, yes.
Dolphins from upper space are in front of me, in present they dwell.
I think that's one of yours.
That's Gojira, I'm afraid.
Is it, really?
That is from, I think, Global Warming. I didn't know.
Okay.
Those were all the ones I had anyway, but...
Yeah. It's because it sounded on a similar vein to Flying Whales, so I thought you'd just taken it and made it dolphins instead. But
no,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's the you got 4 out of 6, if I counted that correctly.
That's better than I was expecting.
Yeah, fair enough. I was expecting that to go much worse. Okay, but that's from Master Sirius by Gojira. I really liked it.
I'm so glad.
Yeah,
I did sort of worry that it would still be a bit too on the heavier side for you, and that it would.
No, you've really split the uprights on this one. It was really exactly what I was looking for with this kind of podcast. So
that's good.
You've set an impressive precedent to follow. So
I'm sure other people will manage to do just as well.
Oh, you're being too modest.
He says, bragging slightly.
So after you shown me from Master Sirius by Gojira, I asked you to listen to Murder of the Universe by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yes, you did.
Who I understand you'd not heard before?
I've never heard of them before. Never heard anything by them before.
You've evidently not been following my Facebook feed, because that's been like my last year. Because they are, as far as I can see, the most prolific band going today.
Yeah, I think I looked them up quickly. They had like 5 albums out last year or something?
5 albums last year. They've averaged pretty much 2 albums a year.
That's some impressive going.
It really is. They've only been going since about 2012, and I think they're on 11 albums or something like that.
That's crazy.
And I mean, well, I'm going to save it for a bit later. But so what did you think of it when you listened to it?
Well, first of all, when you sent it to me, I looked it up, and we've already mentioned about the album artwork thing.
Yeah.
But then I saw just how many tracks there are on this. So it's split out on the streaming service I was used for it. And I think I jokingly mentioned to you that I'm never going to be able to remember which each track was because there's just so many of them.
Oh, I can't remember what they're called either.
Yeah, but then, as you've quite rightly said, it's split into these 3 separate tracks. And once you said that, it became a lot easier to sort of... I could group the tracks together and listen to the track itself rather than trying to just get through the entire album in one go, which was more of a struggle to me.
No, that's
not for any reason other than just it was a lot to take in at once.
It is, and they are distinct packages of music.
They are, yeah. I mean, it's very different between sort of the first and second tracks and the third track, I thought.
I would agree with that. It's the going sort of against the still sort of working out some of the rough edges of the podcast, but my thinking was for the album or the piece of media that I'm going to be suggesting isn't necessarily going to be a good introduction. It'll just be related. Because there are better King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard albums to get into. I'm just going to call them King Gizzard from now on, because I'm going to follow that at some point. But
that's fine.
This is their most uniformly metal-sounding album, so it was the closest I could sort of bring to the Gojira comparison.
Okay.
But this was an album from one of the 5 of last year.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of things there's a thing called the Gizverse, which is like their albums, like they take riffs from previous albums and put it in for a bit. They create stories that loop together.
Okay.
So it's like if you delve further into that, you'll think and like, oh, that was from the start of that bit, or there was that flute riff that came in, and that's from another song or whatever it was.
Sure.
So there's a lot. It's one that's like. It helps if you've listened to all those other ones that you can spot all the references. But, like I say, it's their overall heaviest long-form album, I think. That's why I suggested it.
Okay, well, I might have to look into it more then, because I've not made notes like you did, and I feel like I should have done now, because there's probably a lot of things that I'll have forgotten that I wanted to talk about.
No worries.
But I did notice that when I was doing I was reading the lyrics as I went through, which is different to what I normally do, because normally I just listen to it, but it's such a lyric-driven album. Yeah, well, I think I needed to go through it.
So I think Anthony Fantano on the Needle Drop described it as post-audiobook rock.
Yeah, it's fair enough, that.
Yeah.
Because I think once I had the lyrics in front of me and I could see what was going on through it, it just made more sense to me.
Yeah,
I think it's the best way I can describe it. Because if I'd have just done what I normally do, had it on in the background and sort of listened to it, I would have got the music and I would have got some of the lyrics, but I don't think I would have been able to piece it together as well. I think it's one of these albums where you have to have intent to pay attention to it, at least in the beginning, to fully appreciate it.
Yeah, that's fair. It's certainly their most overtly prog effort.
Right.
Or hard, like sort of prog metal / because they released another album last year that was arguably more progressive in certain elements, but overall it's certainly not one of their easy listening albums, but I thought you might appreciate some of the heavier elements of it.
I did, yeah. It was, I'm trying to... Well, I think when we start diving into the tracks, I'll be able to sort of put words to my thoughts better, maybe.
Well, we can do that now if you'd like.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so delving into the first one, which is called The Tale of the Altered Beast.
Yeah, so I think this is my favourite suite track, whatever you want to call it, on the album, of the 3. Partly because it's the one that, I think because it started, it's the one that I've remembered the most.
Okay, that's fair, yeah. I would say it's certainly the best one they do live. Because it's the one that comes off the best live. Yeah.
But I think it was really interesting because when I first listened to it, I was doing what I normally do, where I sort of had the headphones in and don't pay as much attention, and then realised that wasn't going to work, so got the lyrics up and everything. But even then, I could still roughly tell what was going on.
Yeah.
And I've not delved too much into exactly what everything means in all of the songs, but this song, as best as I can tell, is about someone meeting this half-human, half-bear, I think it is.
Yeah.
And sort of this growing fascination with it and wanting to become a beast like this.
Yeah.
And then either... I didn't figure out whether it was merging with the altered beast at the end or whether it was just becoming one through other means. But
it's one of the least clear... Of the three, I'd say it's probably the least clear narratively.
Yeah.
But it's... so I'd say musically one of the most impressive ones. But yeah, the idea, like, essentially it goes from... He sees the altered beast, and at the end becomes an altered beast, then dies.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
I had the clues in the life-death track name, but...
It's time for you to die. Die.
Yeah.
Die.
Yeah, so that was something that I really wanted to pick out, is that the narration over the music, I thought fit really well, and the, whatever you called it, the post-audio book rock.
Yeah.
It worked really well, because you could see the two perspectives in the story between whether it was being sung or whether it was being spoken about by the narrator.
Yeah, it is handy to have going through it. I think sometimes I thought it was mixed a bit badly, or it was spaced a bit badly, but I think it was a really... I know I heard a lot of reviews who complained about the narration, saying it just dragged on too much, they got sick of it. I thought it was quite... It was unique and it was interesting. It kept me going narratively through the album. Yeah.
I think it's quite an interesting way of doing it as well, because there are some bits of it where the lyrics are basically the same thing. It'll just be alter me, alter me, alter me on repeat.
It's altered beast, alter me, but
yeah. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing to do, but the narration helps keep the story moving along, whereas maybe if they'd have done it in a more lyrical verse style, it would have detracted away from it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, their typical lyrical style is sort of stream of conscience, a lot of repetition sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which I really like anyway, but it's not very conducive to a concept narrative album.
No, again, like I say, it was one of these ones I had to have the lyrics in front of me to truly grasp what was going on, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great musical bits in it with the... going back to I've seen them do it live, and the bit where there's just like a half second of just screaming like feedback, and it goes straight back into a riff, is amazing to see live. It's musically, I'd say, probably the best on the album. Yeah, and
I've not really spoken about the music too much yet, and it's sort of because the lyrics were so prominent, I didn't necessarily absorb the music as much.
Okay,
but I did notice that. I'm trying to think what the best way to describe it is, but all I can think is this organised chaos sort of idea, where it's, when you first listen to it, you're sort of like, oh my god, what's going on here? But it all just works really nicely. Like, they've got all the instruments who sort of, they're weaving in and out of each other and sort of helping to move the track along with the story. And this is why I wasn't ever going to think about becoming a music reviewer, because I just cannot get the right words to describe what I mean.
But I do understand what you mean. Organised chaos it's not a phrase I've ever heard associated with them, but it's actually a very, very apt description of them in many of their cases, because they do a lot of mellower, sort of chilled, relaxed sort of stuff. But when they really kick into gear, it's something that you do tell from them that it sounds frantic and crazy, but it's so tight. They aren't a sloppy band in the slightest. The amount of energy and exuberance they put into their music without letting it get sloppy is astounding. I thought.
Yeah, this is it. I could tell that they put so much thought into the entire thing, and they hadn't glossed over anything. Everything was as it was meant to be. But it just, there's some bits of it where I thought, oh my god, what's going on here? Like, I think that feedback bit you were talking about, when I first heard that, I was going, oh, what's going on here? And then it jumps back in. Yeah. You go, oh, that's so well done. It's just, it was a real surprise to me, because I didn't know what I was going to be getting when you said, oh, it's tangentially related.
Yeah.
And having known nothing about them bar the 2-line description that I get with the artist page on the streaming.
Yeah, they're an odd one to try and pigeonhole, given how if they're going to release 2 albums, then 2 albums a year, then 5 albums a year, they're going to be a very, very disparate collection. They have jazz albums, they have prog albums, they have folk albums, they have everything. But yeah,
that's good.
I'm glad that you at least enjoyed it, and you weren't going, this is just rubbish, repetitive talky noise, you know.
No, I mean, I've listened to some death metal albums where you can barely tell when the song ends, and it's all just a wall of noise. So I'd like to think that I've got quite an open mind about things. But
I mean,
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that's quite important when it comes to this sort of project, is to go into it with an open mind and not have any sort of, oh, I'm not going to like this.
No, and I was confident going in because I sort of trust your judgment that if it's going to be absolute garbage, you weren't going to give it to me unless you were feeling really cruel.
Yeah, no, that would be a bit too much.
I had faith that you would at least give me something that I would
enjoy,
probably quite like. Yeah, which it did. So.
Well, it would be something it would be worth listening to, even if you weren't going to enjoy it.
Yeah, something that even if I didn't enjoy it personally, I could appreciate what it was.
Okay, well, that's good. And then we move on to the second suite, as we'll call it, which is the assuming you've done with the first one.
Yes, yeah.
So we move on to the Lord of Lightning versus the Balrog.
Yes,
which
it's just an amazing concept.
It is really it's one. I think narratively, it's a very interesting one. Musically, it's probably got most of the references because, like I say, there's the bit in the flute bit with Balrog is from their acoustic album. The first intro bit, the sort of riff that sort of builds up then just goes nowhere, is from another album, which it's a riff from an entire song. Just thrown in there for some reason.
Right, I feel like I need to go and visit these back albums and then come back to it so that I can understand and appreciate more.
I can give you further examples to listen to, but we'll get onto that in a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, this one was because they still released singles from this album, and when I say they released promotional videos, but what they did, they just released like suites 2 and 3 as entire 10-minute videos.
Right.
So they released about over a half of the album just for free.
That's good of them.
Yeah, and it was but this was the second one that they released, and they're I really enjoyed when I first heard it. It got me so pumped for the album. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't wait for this. And just because the riff I think is amazingly good. It's a bit repetitive at points, but it's with a bit where they just sort of kick into a riff and they do the screaming, ooh sort of thing.
Yeah,
really, really good.
Yeah, I did really enjoy this one. Probably slightly less than the one before it, but I thought this was, as a collective suite, it was more sort of the cohesive story from start to finish. I understood without needing to read the lyrics over and over again without having to...
This is clearer, certainly, yes.
Yeah, but I thought the story itself was to me it was quite funny. But it just worked so well because there's just this bizarre idea of the Lord of Lightning who fires lightning at a corpse that becomes a Balrog that starts trying to destroy a town.
And then they fight in the end and they kill. Yeah. He kills the Balrog.
And then just flies away at the end. And it was just something that it was just so ridiculous to me.
Lightning not away.
But it worked because they're clearly not taking it too seriously.
Yeah.
They must be able to look at it and objectively say, this is quite funny. Especially with the next suite that comes along.
We have a 10-second section where we just say Balrog 20 times. That's all we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it was, I can't remember which song it is, but when they start talking about how they're starting to get into the fight and it turns into this very sort of
Gregorian chanting, sort of
Yeah, it's you could see that being a build-up to a fight in any sort of other media, whether it be film or TV or even just on a sort of classical music suite, less so. But it had more of that cohesive flow with the story, I thought, musically, which maybe the first one didn't have so much.
Yeah, I think...
Because it just seemed to be this crazy situation. but I still like both of them. I just thought they were very different tracks, which was just very interesting to me.
Yeah, I did enjoy them, and I do appreciate how, say, one I think focuses more on the narrative structure, one on the musical structure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you that I say I like the Altered Beast more than the Lord of Lightning, but I do like both.
I do like both as well. I think, yeah, it's sort of, again, with Gojira, when I said this is my least favourite, it was in the grand scheme of the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, I like this album, and it was like their second worst last year, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like, I would only put it 4th out of 5th out of the 5 albums they did last year, and I still really like it.
Yeah.
I'll get on to my overall feelings on the album, but then we move on to Suite 3, which is...
Yes. Very different to the first two, I thought.
Hantayumi. It's an anagram of humanity. It's so clever.
I did get that, actually, without having to look that up.
Really? I had to explicitly be told that, and it's sort of like, that is actually quite clever. He duped me.
Yeah.
But
that's the one bit I did get without having to.
This one, it's I mean, I'm more stumbling because I don't know what the action's going to be when I say this is my favourite one from the album. This is my absolute favourite one. I love this one so much.
That's
it's just bonkers.
It is bonkers, I would give you that.
I mean,
I would probably put it last on the album.
That's fair.
But
I mean,
I think it's just because when I was reading through the lyrics, it was just so... Well...
yeah. I mean, this was the first taste of the album that we got.
Right.
Because it was the first one they put out. And I remember at the time thinking, this is going to be the best album I've ever heard in my life. Because I was already a big King Gizzard fan. Then they were putting on this ostentatious prog project that was still so silly, but so...
Yeah.
My brother is really, really tired of the Hantayumi voice automation thing.
Right.
Like, he can't stand it. Like, he gets... And, like, they keep cropping up in, like, some of the later albums they put out. Like, they would just have him just, like, end an album by going, hello, and then just... he'd just be like, he'd put it in there again. But I really liked it, because it's just... got such a great... The music, I think, is just so groovy. Well, a lot of the bits, like, say, when it's just the robot voice talking.
Yeah.
And they just have this really tight groove in the background, and then it'll go into something like Vomit Coffin, which is...
Yeah.
One of the weaker bits of the album. I will grant you, Vomit Coffin is a bit weird, but...
Yeah, that was probably my least favourite bit of it.
Yeah.
As a whole, because I agree with you, the grooves throughout the background of it were really good. I really enjoyed it.
But then they had something like Digital Black, which is one of the, like, the way when it starts, the way the track pretty much opens up, which I thought was one of their more metal sort of sounds. Just a da-na-na-na-na-na, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-na-na-na, like, oh dear, that hurt. That really, I really like that bit of the track. And the outro, I think, is amazing. I've heard some people complain about it. That it's repetitive, it goes on too long, but I just love it.
It was good as a sort of, like, a grand finale to everything. I think, as I was listening to it, I was reading the lyrics, and I was focusing so heavily on the lyrics, and just, because the story's about this cyborg building a machine that vomits and dies for him, which is one of the most metal things that I can think of. But it was just, I don't know, something in my brain just was not horrified by it, but just slightly disgusted by it.
It is gross. Don't get me wrong.
It was gross, but then as it was going through, it's just like,
it drops from my crotch onto the floor, and with a heavy slap, it hits the ground. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's just, but it's so visceral that it was perfectly describing it, and it made me slightly uncomfortable, but in a good way.
It's the murder of the universe. It should make you uncomfortable.
Well, this was it. Like, they're making no illusions that this is just a horrible thing that's happening, and it's vomiting is filling up the entire space of the universe. And
I mean, yeah, it's I do completely. I'm being a bit flippant when I'm saying, like, oh, it's the best. Like, it's amazing. I really do understand why someone would have a problem enjoying it and why they would consider it the weakest part of the album.
Yeah, I think I could keep listening to it, and I'd be perfectly happy to listen to it, but maybe not reading the lyrics through while I'm doing it.
Don't watch the video then, because they sort of the lyrics just flash up the whole bit because it's like a text to speech thing. The lyrics just start typing themselves out.
Right, duly noted.
Yeah. Streamer only.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, it was so different to the other two that it felt like quite a nice change of pace as well. Because they've clearly gone from I think the first one could quite easily be a folk tale. The second one I think they started off by saying this is a tale that I've never told before about the Lord of Lightning and the Balrog. So they're both you could see them as folk tales that are being passed down, being talked about.
Yeah.
Whereas the last one is very, well, now we're in the future, and here's what the future's like.
Everything dies under vomit.
Yeah.
But it is told in the present sense as well, because it's, well, mostly anyway, actually, I'm thinking about it. There's sometimes, but the ending at least is very much this is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I am 1 million times the size. And it just expands and grows and grows and grows. Yeah,
overall, it was an interesting album to throw me in. I did enjoy it.
Like I say, it's the odd sort of situation I'm in when I get suggested an album that's a good intro album. That might necessarily mean a related album might not be the best. It might not be the best intro into another person's work, even if it is the best related piece.
Yeah, I mean, I really did enjoy it. It's not necessarily something that I would have picked myself to ever listen to. I probably would have seen it and gone, whoa, what's that? Let's leave that alone.
Well, I'd say the two that you should listen to, if you want to get into King Gizzard, the two you should listen to are either Nonagon Infinity or I'm in Your Mind Fuzz.
Okay.
And those two are much better introductions to the band's work. Their sort of variety of sounds and everything. And they're much... Okay. I think they're better albums.
Okay. There's a lot of mentions, I can't remember which song it's in. Is it in the final suite to Nonagon?
Yeah, it's... This is sort of...
Or is it in the second one?
Yeah, it's in the second one. It's in... where they go, Nonagon Infinity.
That's it, yes.
It's the... Because there's the album from 2016 was called Nonagon Infinity, and it was the album that sort of broke them into the worldwide sort of sphere.
Okay.
Because the two albums that came one after the other. No, they weren't actually, sorry, but they're two of their biggest albums are Nonagon Infinity and I'm in Your Mind Fuzz. And they're the best entry points. So at least I can recommend them at this point, at this juncture. Those are the best entry points for that band.
Okay.
And there might be a future podcast where I suggest that for someone to listen to, go into great detail then. But they have a lot of emerging themes that come up in this album. So a lot of the riffs they use are from other albums.
Right.
Just the ones that are just there in the background or just there for 10 seconds are from another album.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'll definitely have to give them a try then, because it'll be interesting to sort of be able to put context back into them.
Yeah. It's an interesting journey to go on, at least.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that I took the journey in that album, definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, you certainly, I think most people I would have suggested it to would have clocked out before the vomit section. So you persevered, so that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, in full admittance, that's the one I listened to the least, because
if it's the one you enjoyed the least, then fair enough.
Yeah, but definitely the first 2/3 of the album, you could see quite happily recommending to people. I think you'd have to maybe give a pre-warning that the last one's a bit vomity, maybe, but
a bit chunky. That last bit.
A bit chunky. Yeah.
So I think that pretty much brings the podcast to a close. I think.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been good fun.
It's going to be an interesting journey, but I think we've started off very well because I've learned I can get into a bit of groove metal or death metal or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, definitely. And there's plenty of bands that I could give you recommendations of based off that.
I mean, if you want to list them off now, because I did a bit with King Gizzard just then. So if you wanted to give a wider shotgun blast of recommendations?
Now that I'm on the spot, I can't think of anything.
Well, you can give me. I can put some in the notes, like the notes underneath the podcast or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, trying to think of any off the top of my head now, it's not going to go well. I'd probably just think of like ones that immediately come to mind.
I mean, we already mentioned The Satanist by Behemoth.
Yes.
Was it?
Yeah, we did.
Behemoth? I don't know how you...
I always pronounce it Behemoth, but I could be very wrong about that.
Anyhow, that's one.
Yeah.
Listener can check the notes beneath the podcast and find some more.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to promote? Anything you're doing?
No.
Fair enough.
No, I'm not doing anything. That makes me sound like a really boring person, doesn't it?
I mean, you're not doing any sort of like artistic endeavour that people need to check out or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe one day in the future.
All right.
And then I can come back on and I can promote it then.
Watch
But
this
for
space.
now...
I mean, like, that's the thing, like, it's this podcast has certainly got potential for just having, you could come back on again, you could have as many episodes as you want, really, because it's not the, you can have anyone on as many times as I want, really, as long as they're bringing some new thing for me to listen to.
Oh, there's definitely things I could point you at. Whether you'd like them or not is a different question, but...
I'm certainly willing to find out that's the point.
Yeah, well, if you ever want a dropping in at the shallow end for power metal, then hit me up. I can definitely do that for you.
Hang on, I'm going to make a note of that. It's also called thrown in at the shallow end, but never mind.
I was close.
How did you get the name of my established brand wrong? Yeah. Power metal.
I'm so sorry. I'll have to get it on a t-shirt so that I can look at it and remind myself.
I'll get the merch stall up and running. Okie doke. I have actually made a note of that, power metal, because that's certainly something I can come back to. Excellent. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, like I said.
Yeah. This has been Thrown In at the Shallow End, episode 1. Hopefully it develops and grows forever, like a big pile of vomit. Ta-ra, everyone.
Goodbye.